The unexpected encounter. Jake sat alone in his small workshop at the edge of the old spaceport. The night was quiet except for the soft hum of machines and the clinking sound of tools. His hands were dirty with oil, his shirt torn from a long day of repairs. Life as a mechanic was not glamorous, but it was steady. Spaceships came and went, some broken, some beyond saving, and Jake always managed to patch them together. He was about to close for the night when a sudden roar cut through the silence. At first he thought it was thunder, but the ground shook beneath his feet and a flash of fire lit up the distant sky. Jake rushed outside, squinting into the darkness. Something was falling fast, leaving a trail of smoke as it cut across the horizon. It crashed beyond the hills with a deafening explosion. The ground trembled again, dust rising in the distance. Jake froze. Crashes near the old port were not rare, but this felt different. Louder, heavier, almost alive. Against his better judgment, he grabbed his flashlight and a small welding torch, then ran toward the smoke. The air smelled of burning metal. Sparks flew from the wreckage and strange glowing liquid dripped onto the ground, hissing as it ate through the dirt. Jake coughed and covered his mouth, pushing closer. What he saw next made his heart stop. A ship, small but sleek, lay torn open like a broken bird. Its design was nothing Jake had ever seen before. Not human, not military, not cargo. This was alien, and then he heard it, a cry faint and weak. Jake's chest tightened. He followed the sound and found her. A figure slumped against the wreck, her body covered in strange silver armor that seemed to melt into her skin. She was bleeding, her face pale, her eyes glowing faintly under the moonlight. An alien woman. In her arms she held something wrapped in a metallic cloth. The bundle moved and another soft cry escaped. It was a child. Jake stepped forward carefully, unsure if she would see him as friend or foe. The alien mother turned her head with great effort. Her voice was weak, broken, but filled with emotion. "You, human," she whispered. "Please, help." Before Jake could speak, she tried to lift the bundle toward him. Her arms trembled and her eyes filled with tears. He could see the fear in her expression, but also trust. Jake hesitated. His mind raced with questions. Who was she? Why was she here? And why give him the baby? But as he looked into her eyes, he understood she had no other choice. Slowly, he reached out. The cloth was warm, almost alive, as he took the bundle. He pulled it close, careful not to hurt the infant inside. The child stirred, its small hand glowing faintly as it brushed against Jake's chest. His heart skipped a beat. The alien mother gave a shaky smile. "Protect my child," she said, her voice breaking. "They will come." Jake opened his mouth to ask who they were, but it was too late. Her body went limp, her glowing eyes dimming as her last breath escaped into the night. For a long moment, Jake stood frozen, the baby in his arms, the wreck burning behind him. His mind screamed at him to run, to leave this madness behind. But when the infant began to cry again, something inside him shifted. He looked down at the tiny face glowing softly in the dark and felt an unexpected pull. Responsibility. Then he heard it. Voices. Distant at first, but growing closer. Harsh guttural sounds mixed with mechanical clicks. Jake turned sharply, scanning the shadows beyond the smoke. He saw figures moving, their shapes tall and armored. The alien mother had been right. Someone was coming, his heart pounded. He hurried back toward his workshop, clutching the baby tightly. The cries grew louder, echoing in the empty night. Jake whispered, "Shh, quiet now. I've got you," though he wasn't sure if he was trying to calm the child or himself. The workshop lights came into view, faint but familiar. Jake pushed through the door, slammed it shut, and bolted it. His hand shook as he set the infant gently on his workbench. The baby blinked up at him, its eyes glowing like tiny stars. Jake wiped the sweat from his brow. "What have I gotten myself into?" he muttered. Outside, heavy footsteps echoed across the scrapyard. Strange shadows passed by the windows, scanning, searching. Jake crouched low, holding his breath. The baby squirmed, letting out a soft sound. Jake whispered desperately, "Please, not now." The shadows stopped. A guttural voice growled, "The infant is near." Jake's blood ran cold. Whoever they were here for the baby, and they would not stop. The night that had started as ordinary was now anything but. Jake, a simple mechanic, had been handed something far greater than himself. The infant of a dying alien mother, a secret wrapped in glowing cloth, and now, as danger closed in from the darkness, one thing was certain. His life would never be the same again. A strange baby. The workshop was dark except for the dim orange glow of a half-dead lamp. Jake leaned against the wall, breathing hard, his ears sharp to every sound outside. The baby lay on his workbench, wrapped in its strange metallic cloth, glowing faintly in the shadows. For a moment, there was silence. The footsteps outside faded, leaving only the crackle of fire from the wreck far away. Jake wiped his forehead with his sleeve. His heart was still pounding like a hammer. He turned his eyes to the infant. It was not like any child he had seen before. Its skin shifted color slowly, almost like ripples of light beneath water, blue when it was calm, green when curious, and red when upset. The glow was not bright but soft, like the shine of a star far away. Jake hesitated before leaning closer. "What are you?" he whispered. The baby blinked at him. Its eyes were large, silver like liquid metal, and for a second, Jake felt as if the child could see into his thoughts. Then it cried. The sound was soft but strange. Tools on the shelves began to rattle. Loose bolts rolled across the table. A wrench fell to the floor with a sharp clang. Jake jumped back, startled. "Quiet," he whispered harshly, grabbing the child and pressing it gently against his chest. To his surprise, the moment he touched it, the crying stopped. The glow of its skin softened to a calm blue, and the rattling tools went still. Jake stood frozen, holding the child close. He could feel warmth, almost a vibration, like a heartbeat that wasn't just inside its chest but all around it. This was no ordinary baby, but the alien mother's words echoed in his mind. "Protect my child. They will come." Jake looked at the door, then back at the baby. He had no idea who they were, but he had already seen the shadows. Whoever they were still out there. He sighed heavily. "Looks like it's just you and me now," the baby cooed softly, almost as if answering him. Jake placed the infant on a pile of clean cloth he used for polishing engines. The metallic wrap the mother had given seemed alive. It tightened gently around the baby like it knew how to cradle it. Jake studied it closer. Symbols glowed faintly on the fabric, moving and changing like liquid letters. He didn't understand them, but they felt important, like a warning or a message. Curiosity itched at him. He pulled out an old scanner he sometimes used to check foreign tech. The moment he pointed it at the cloth, the device sparked and died. Jake cursed under his breath. Whatever this was, his human tools couldn't handle it. He sat on his stool, staring at the child. His workshop smelled of oil and rust. His shirt was sticky with sweat, and outside, danger lurked in the dark. Yet here he was, babysitting an alien. Jake rubbed his face. "Why me? Out of all people? Why drop this on me?" The baby's silver eyes followed him as if it understood. It reached out a tiny glowing hand, and Jake felt a strange pull in his chest. Against his will, he smiled faintly. "Yeah, all right. I'll keep you safe. For now." Hours passed. The night stretched on. Jake stayed awake, listening to every sound, waiting for footsteps. But the strangers outside did not return. Maybe they were searching elsewhere. Maybe they were planning something worse. The baby grew restless, shifting colors from green to pale yellow. It squirmed and let out a strange humming sound. Jake panicked for a second, thinking it was about to cry again. Instead, the hum spread through the air like a vibration. Suddenly, the old radio on Jake's workbench turned on by itself. Static filled the room, followed by broken voices speaking in a harsh alien tongue. Jake froze, staring at the radio. The baby's hum matched the rhythm of the static, almost like it was controlling it. Then the voices became clear, translated somehow into English. "The infant must not survive. Search every sector. Kill the human if he interferes." Jake's blood ran cold. He looked at the baby, who had gone quiet again, its glow dim. Somehow the child had let him hear their enemies. He now knew what they wanted, and he knew they were coming back. The night wasn't safe anymore. Jake couldn't stay in the workshop. He grabbed a small bag, stuffing in tools, food packs, and water. He fashioned a carrier from a sling of tough fabric and placed the baby inside, securing it against his chest. The infant made a soft cooing noise, the glow on its skin turning calm blue again. Jake whispered, "We're moving, kid. Sitting here is suicide." He stepped outside cautiously. The scrapyard was quiet, but the air felt heavy, as if someone was watching. The wreckage still smoked in the distance. The stars above were hidden by clouds. He tightened his grip on the baby. He wasn't a soldier, wasn't a hero, just a tired mechanic who fixed ships for spare credits. But right now he was the only shield this child had. But deep inside, Jake knew the hunters would return. And when they did, hiding would no longer be enough. The hunters arrive. The scrapyard was quiet, but Jake knew silence was never safe. He carried the alien infant close to his chest, its faint glow hidden beneath layers of cloth. Every step he took echoed in the dirt. His eyes darted to every shadow, every flicker of light. The wreck of the alien ship still smoked far behind him, but the danger from it was creeping closer. He reached a narrow alley of stacked metal parts and broken engines. It was a place he knew well, a maze only a mechanic would understand. He crouched low, trying to make himself invisible. The baby stirred against him, making a soft sound, but Jake whispered quickly, "Shh, stay quiet, please." Then he heard it. A low hum, steady and sharp like machines powering up. It wasn't from his workshop. It wasn't from any human craft. The sound grew louder, then stopped. The night held its breath. From the darkness, shapes appeared. Tall figures stepped into the scrapyard. They were armored head to toe, their bodies moving with precision, almost mechanical. Their helmets glowed with red slits for eyes. Each one carried weapons that hummed faintly, like they were alive. The same guttural voices Jake had heard on the radio cut through the silence. "Search. The infant is near." Jake's chest tightened. He pressed his back against a rusted metal wall, clutching the baby tighter. His hand shook, but he forced himself to stay still. One wrong sound, one cry from the infant, and he was finished. The hunters spread out. Their boots crushed gravel. Their scanners flickered with cold blue light sweeping across the piles of scrap. Jake could hear them tearing through old engines, flipping over containers, smashing anything that could hide life. They were thorough and they were patient. One of them stopped near Jake's hiding place. The hunter tilted its head, listening. For a second, Jake thought it had heard the faint thump of his racing heart. The baby shifted slightly. Jake held his breath so hard it hurt. Then the infant let out a tiny coo. The hunter froze. Its red eyes turned in their direction. Jake's mind screamed, "Move now!" He darted sideways, grabbing an old metal pipe from the ground. With all the strength he had, he swung it against a hanging sheet of steel nearby. The clang was loud, echoing through the scrapyard. The hunter's head snapped toward the noise, fooled for a moment. Jake bolted in the opposite direction, clutching the infant as tightly as he could. The hunters roared, their guttural voices rising. Red lights scanned the area in sharp lines. "Human," one of them growled. "He has the child!" Shots rang out. Bolts of searing energy tore through the junk piles, exploding engines and sending showers of sparks into the air. Jake ducked behind an old shuttle wing, his lungs burning as he gasped for air. The infant trembled but did not cry. It only glowed brighter, as if sensing the danger. Jake whispered quickly, "Hang in there, kid. Just hang in there." The hunters moved closer, their heavy steps shaking the ground. One of them reached the wing Jake was hiding behind. Its weapon glowed, ready to fire. Jake scanned the ground desperately. His eyes landed on a half-broken fuel cell lying nearby. He grabbed a wrench from his bag, his mind racing. When the hunter stepped closer, Jake hurled the wrench with all his strength. It struck the fuel cell, and for a second nothing happened. Then the cell erupted in a burst of fire. The explosion knocked the hunter backward, its armor smoking. Jake shielded the baby with his body as heat washed over him. His ears rang, but he forced himself up. He staggered toward another path in the scrapyard. His legs ached, his lungs screamed, but adrenaline pushed him forward. The alien infant pressed a tiny hand against Jake's chest. Suddenly, Jake felt a strange warmth spreading inside him, giving him strength. His steps grew steadier, his vision sharper. The baby was helping him, but the hunters were not done. Two of them leapt onto a stack of scrap, moving with unnatural speed. They blocked the exit, their weapons raised. Jake froze. He had no way out. One hunter snarled in broken English, "Give the child." Jake's grip tightened. He shook his head. Not a chance. The hunter aimed its weapon. The infant in Jake's arms suddenly glowed with a fierce white light. The glow pulsed outward, shaking the ground, rattling the air. The hunters staggered, their red eyes flickering as if blinded. Jake didn't wait. He ran straight at them, ducking low as their weapons fired blindly. Sparks flew. Scrap metal melted, but Jake slid through a gap between their legs and bolted into the shadows beyond. He didn't stop running until he reached the far end of the scrapyard. His chest heaved, his arms ached, but he was alive. The baby's glow faded back to soft blue, and Jake whispered hoarsely, "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" Behind him, the hunters regrouped, their voices sharp with anger. The human protects it. He must not escape. Jake leaned against a wall, holding the baby close. His body trembled from exhaustion, but his eyes burned with something new. Determination. He wasn't just hiding anymore. The hunters weren't going to stop, and running would only delay them. For the first time, Jake realized what the alien mother had truly left him. Not just a child, but a fight, and he was already in the middle of it. The first escape, Jake's hands were slick with sweat as he tightened the sling across his chest. The alien infant rested inside, glowing faintly under the cloth. The workshop around him was a mess. Tools scattered, shelves broken, smoke still hanging in the air from the earlier fight. He had bought himself a few minutes, maybe less. Outside, the hunters regrouped. Their voices were low and mechanical, their footsteps deliberate. Jake knew they would not stop. He had to leave now. He rushed to the far corner of the workshop and pulled a panel from the wall. Behind it was an old service hatch that led into the scrapyard tunnels. They weren't safe, but they were the only way out. The baby stirred, letting out a soft hum. Jake glanced down at it, whispering, "Stay quiet, little one." Just for a while longer. The hum faded. Jake took a deep breath and climbed into the hatch. The tunnels were narrow and smelled of rust and dust. Pipes lined the walls, dripping water that echoed in the silence. Jake moved carefully, his footsteps muffled on the metal floor. The baby's glow lit the path faintly, painting the walls in shades of blue and silver. For a brief moment, Jake felt hope. Maybe he could slip past the hunters and disappear into the maze of tunnels. Maybe they wouldn't follow. But that hope shattered when a heavy crash echoed behind him. The hunters had found the hatch. Jake's heart pounded. He picked up his pace, half running through the tunnels, his boots splashing in shallow puddles. The baby shifted but stayed silent. The glow brightened, as if it understood the danger. Red light suddenly cut through the darkness ahead. The hunters weren't just behind him. They were in front of him, too. Their scanners swept the tunnel, searching, closing in. Jake ducked into a side corridor, his mind racing. He knew the tunnels better than anyone. If he could reach the old fuel depot, maybe he could use it to his advantage. The infant let out a small sound, and Jake whispered, I know. Hold on." The fuel depot was nothing more than a forgotten chamber filled with leaking barrels and cracked pipes. The smell of fuel was thick, sharp in the air. Jake crouched behind a stack of containers, setting the baby down gently for a moment. The hunters' footsteps grew louder, their voices echoing in the tunnels. Find the child. Kill the human. Jake scanned the room, his eyes landing on an old ignition coil lying among the junk. His mind clicked into mechanics mode. He grabbed the coil, stripped a wire, and pressed it against a leaking pipe. Sparks flew, catching the fuel mist in the air. The chamber hissed with danger. One wrong move and the whole place would go up. Jake picked up the infant again, whispering softly, "We're about to make some noise." The hunters entered the chamber, their red eyes scanning, their weapons humming. Jake stood slowly from behind the barrels. His chest was tight, but his voice was steady. "Looking for me?" The hunters turned instantly. Jake yanked the wire free. The spark caught, flames racing along the fuel mist. In seconds, the chamber roared with fire. The hunters staggered as explosions tore through the pipes, metal shrieking and barrels bursting. Jake shielded the baby with his body, sprinting toward the far exit as the fire chased him. The tunnel shook with the force of the blast, chunks of debris raining down. Behind him, the hunters roared in anger, their voices lost in the flames. He stumbled out into the night, coughing from the smoke, his clothes singed. The scrapyard stretched before him, dark and twisted, but at least it was open air. The baby stirred, its glow dim but steady. Jake looked down and managed a weak smile. We're still alive. That's something. But his relief didn't last. From the smoke behind him, one of the hunters emerged, its armor blackened but still intact. It limped slightly, but its weapon was raised, glowing with deadly light. Jake's heart sank. He had no more tricks left. The infant suddenly pressed its tiny hand against Jake's chest. A surge of warmth spread through him, stronger than before. His vision sharpened, his body steadied. The glow from the child grew brighter, forming a faint shield of light around them both. The hunter fired. The bolt struck the shield, exploding in sparks but leaving them unharmed. Jake stared in disbelief, then at the child. You're protecting us? The baby's silver eyes blinked slowly, calm and steady. Jake didn't wait to test the shield again. He turned and ran, using the cover of smoke and scrap to vanish into the night. The hunter's angry growl echoed behind him, but its shots missed, slamming into piles of junk. Jake pushed forward until the scrapyard lights were just specks behind him. Finally, he reached the edge of the wastelands beyond the port. The land stretched open, barren and silent under the stars. He dropped to his knees, panting hard. The baby was still glowing faintly, its small hand gripping his shirt. Jake looked at the wastelands, then back at the scrapyard where red lights flickered in the distance. He knew the hunters weren't gone. They would never stop. But tonight, at least, they had escaped. Jake cradled the child, whispering softly, "You and me, kid. That's all we've got. But that's enough. We'll survive." The infant let out a soft coo, its glow pulsing gently like a promise. And in that moment, beneath the endless sky, Jake understood. This was only the beginning. The secret revealed. The wasteland stretched far and empty under the pale light of the moons. Broken rocks, dry soil, and scattered bones of long-dead machines lay across the ground. Jake moved slowly, his legs heavy from exhaustion. The infant pressed against his chest in the sling. The cool night wind carried dust across the open land, whispering like ghosts. He had escaped the hunters for now. But Jake knew they would not stop. Their red eyes still burned in his mind, their guttural voices promising death. He needed to stay ahead of them, but he also needed to understand why. As he walked, the child stirred in the sling. Its glow shifted from soft blue to pale gold. Jake looked down. "What is it, kid?" Hungry, tired, the infant lifted a tiny hand and touched the metallic cloth wrapped around its body. The fabric pulsed, symbols flickering across it like living fire. Jake stopped walking, watching as the marks shifted into shapes, almost like words. He crouched near a fallen metal pillar, setting the baby gently on his lap. The symbols brightened, weaving into a pattern. Jake leaned closer, his heart pounding. The cloth projected a faint shimmer of light into the air. It formed shapes, blurry at first, then sharper, an image of a world he did not know. A planet beautiful and alive, covered in silver forests and glowing oceans. Towers of crystal rose high into the sky, ships of light soaring above them. Jake's eyes widened. He was staring into another world, the infant's world. Then the vision shifted. Fire spread across the forests. Towers crumbled. Dark ships filled the skies, raining destruction. The beauty turned into war and the planet burned. Jake's chest tightened. He saw the alien mother, the same woman who had given him the child, leading a desperate escape. Behind her, soldiers fought, falling one by one. She carried the infant in her arms, running toward a ship, her eyes filled with both fear and hope. The vision flickered again and the mother's voice echoed faintly. "Protect the air. Protect the last light." Jake blinked hard, the images burning into his mind. He looked down at the infant, who now glowed softly in his arms. "Air?" he whispered. "You're royalty? A survivor of all that?" The baby blinked at him, calm as if confirming it. Jake leaned back, running a hand over his face. He was no soldier, no protector. He was just a mechanic with dirty hands and broken tools. But this child was the last hope of a destroyed world. He thought of the hunter's words. The infant must not survive. Now he understood. They weren't just chasing a baby. They were trying to end a bloodline, a legacy, maybe even a chance for peace, Jake muttered. What have I gotten myself into? The baby made a small sound and the vision returned, this time not of planets but of himself. Jake saw flashes, his workshop, his hands repairing engines, the child growing older under his care. He saw himself teaching it to use tools, laughing as sparks flew. Then the vision darkened, hunters breaking through walls, fire, chaos. He saw himself standing against them, fighting, protecting the child at all costs. Jake gasped and pulled back, the vision fading. His hands trembled. The baby looked up at him, silver eyes shining. "You can show me the future?" Jake whispered. His throat felt dry. "Or at least, possible futures." The infant reached out again, touching his cheek with a soft glow. Warmth spread through him, calming his fear. For the first time since the crash, Jake didn't feel completely alone. Hours passed as he sat in the wasteland watching the stars. He thought about the mother's sacrifice, the hunter's determination, and the visions the child had shown him. A plan began to form in his mind. He couldn't keep running blindly. He needed answers. He needed allies. Somewhere out there, someone must know about these hunters and the child's people. But to find them, he had to survive the night. He stood, adjusting the sling and tightening his grip on the bag of tools. The baby nestled against him, glowing faintly blue again. Jake spoke softly, more to himself than to the child. "If you really are the last of your kind, then I'll make sure you live, no matter what it costs." The baby's glow pulsed once like a heartbeat, as if agreeing. Suddenly a sound broke the quiet. Engines. Jake froze. He crouched low, scanning the horizon. In the distance, lights moved across the wasteland, 3, maybe 4 ships flying low. Their beams swept across the ground like hunting dogs sniffing for prey. His pulse quickened. The hunters had returned, and now they had machines. Jake ran toward a ridge of rocks, keeping low. The baby stayed quiet, its glow dimming as if it knew the danger. He slid behind the rocks, pressing his back against the stone, watching the ships pass overhead. Their red lights cut through the night like blades. One of the beams stopped. It hovered over the ridge, scanning. Jake held his breath, clutching the child close. The ship's voice crackled through the air, metallic and cruel. "Life signs detected, proceed." Jake cursed under his breath. He was out of time. The infant stirred again, its glow shifting to white. Jake felt warmth surge through him, stronger than before. His fear dulled, replaced by focus. The child wasn't just showing him visions, it was giving him strength, lending him part of its power. He looked up at the ships and whispered, "All right, kid. If we're in this together, let's fight." The wasteland wind howled as the hunter's machines circled overhead, closing in. Jake stood tall, the infant glowing like a tiny star against his chest. For the first time, he didn't feel like just a mechanic. He felt like a protector of something greater than himself, and deep inside he knew the real battle was only beginning. The final stand. The wasteland air was sharp with dust and smoke. Jake crouched behind the jagged rocks, the alien child pressed close to his chest. Above him, the hunters' ships circled like vultures, their red beams sweeping the ground. He couldn't keep running forever. His legs ached, his body was raw with exhaustion, and the hunters were multiplying. He thought of the visions the child had shown him, of himself fighting, standing tall against impossible odds. It felt ridiculous. He was no soldier, but he was something else. He was a mechanic, and mechanics built things out of scraps. Jake glanced back toward the scrapyard in the distance. His workshop was a wreck, half-burned from the chase, but it was still full of the one thing he had always trusted: tools, machines, and junk waiting to be turned into something useful. He tightened the sling around the baby. "We're not running anymore, kid. We're going to fight, but on our terms." The baby's glow pulsed softly as if in agreement. Jake made his way back through the tunnels, slipping past the patrol lights. He knew every corner, every crawl space. The hunters were strong, but they weren't clever. That was his edge. When he finally returned to the ruins of his workshop, the air was still thick with the smell of burning fuel. The roof sagged. Tools lay scattered across the floor. Jake set the baby down gently on a pile of cloth, brushing dust from its glowing face. "Stay here," he whispered. "I've got work to do." Then he rolled up his sleeves. Jake tore into the wreckage like a man possessed. His hands moved faster than his fear. He pulled broken coils from old engines, stripped wiring from dead consoles, and scavenged fuel cells from ruined generators. Sparks flew as he welded pipes into crude frames. His mind raced, every idea a desperate gamble. He built traps the way only a mechanic could, messy but clever. Fuel lines rigged to ignite, pressure tanks wired to burst, chains hooked to pulleys that could drop entire piles of scrap at the pull of a lever. He turned the wreck of his workshop into a battlefield. Every clang of metal echoed through the night. The baby watched silently, its silver eyes following Jake's every move. At one point, it reached out a tiny hand and touched a half-finished trap. The glow spread into the wires, stabilizing the circuits Jake had rushed through. For a moment, he just stared. "You're helping me," he said softly. "Guess we really are in this together." By dawn, the sky was red with the first light of morning. The hunters arrived as the sun broke the horizon. Their ships landed around the scrapyard, metal legs digging into the dirt. Doors hissed open and armored figures marched out, weapons raised. Their voices carried across the smoke. "The child is here. Kill the human. Leave nothing." Jake stood at the center of his broken workshop, the infant strapped tightly to his chest. His face was streaked with soot, his eyes bloodshot, but his hands were steady. Around him, the traps hummed quietly, hidden in the wreckage. "All right," he muttered under his breath. "Let's see how tough you really are." The hunters advanced. The first one stepped onto a fuel-soaked patch of ground. Jake yanked a lever. A spark ignited and fire roared upward, engulfing the alien in flames. It staggered, screeching, before collapsing in smoking ruin. The others spread out, cautious now. One fired a bolt of energy, but Jake ducked behind a wall of scrap. The shot hit a pressure tank hidden inside. The explosion tore through the air, sending shards of metal flying. 2 more hunters fell, their armor dented and sparking. Jake didn't stop. He pulled chains, flipped switches, triggered hidden bombs. The scrapyard came alive with chaos. Explosions echoed, fire spread, and the hunters roared in confusion. For every step they took, Jake made them pay, but he was only one man. And there were too many. The leader emerged from the smoke, taller, stronger, its armor glowing with dark energy. It raised a massive weapon, pointing it directly at Jake. "You cannot win," it growled in broken English. "The child's power will end all. We will erase it." Jake's jaw tightened. He glanced at the baby, whose glow pulsed brighter with each word. He could feel the child's heartbeat against his chest, steady and strong. "Maybe that's exactly why it should live," Jake replied. The leader fired. The blast ripped through the air. The baby's glow flared, forming a shield that cracked but held. Jake gritted his teeth, pulling the last lever. The ground beneath the leader exploded as Jake's final trap triggered. A buried reactor core went critical, sending a blinding wave of fire and metal upward. The leader was hurled back, its armor shattered, its weapon destroyed. Smoke filled the workshop, the walls collapsing around them. Jake shielded the baby as debris rained down. When the dust cleared, the leader was gone, buried beneath twisted metal and fire. Jake fell to his knees, coughing hard. His arms shook, his body burned with cuts and bruises, but he was alive. The infant looked up at him, its glow softening again, calm blue returning. It reached out with its tiny hand, touching his cheek. Warmth spread through him, healing the worst of his wounds. Jake let out a rough laugh. "Guess we made it." He looked at the burning wreck of his workshop. His old life, engines, repairs, quiet nights was gone. He had destroyed it all just to survive one night. But as he held the child close, he knew he hadn't lost everything. He had gained something far greater. The hunters were beaten for now. But they would come again. Jake whispered to the infant, "They'll keep coming. But I'll be ready, and so will you." The child's silver eyes glowed in the smoke, calm and steady. Together they had survived the final stand, and together they would face whatever came next. A new beginning. The sun rose slowly over the wasteland, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Smoke still curled from the ruins of Jake's workshop, the scrapyard scattered with twisted metal and scorched earth. The battle was over, but the world felt heavier, quieter, as if holding its breath. Jake sat on a broken beam, his body aching from bruises and burns. His hands were cut and blackened with soot, but he kept the infant close against his chest. The child glowed softly, its warmth seeping into him, dulling the pain. For a long time, Jake just sat there, staring at the horizon. His old life lay in ruins behind him. The place he had lived, worked, and hidden from the galaxy's chaos was gone. Yet as he looked down at the infant's silver eyes, he realized he hadn't lost everything. In fact, he had gained something that would change him forever. "You and me," Jake whispered hoarsely. "Looks like we're stuck together now." The baby cooed softly, its glow pulsing like a heartbeat. By midday, Jake forced himself to his feet. He scavenged what little remained of the workshop, some food packs, a water canister, a half-broken toolkit. The rest was ash and twisted steel. He slung the bag over his shoulder, adjusted the sling carrying the child, and turned his back on the ruins. Each step into the wasteland felt strange. He was walking away not just from a home, but from who he used to be. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was a guardian. As he walked, the child stirred again. This time the glow from its skin brightened and images flickered in Jake's mind. Visions like the ones before. He saw himself traveling across starfields, the baby growing in his care. He saw hidden worlds, allies and enemies waiting in the shadows. He saw danger, betrayal, and fire, but he also saw hope. The child standing tall, no longer helpless. Jake stopped in his tracks, breathing hard. The vision faded, but the feeling remained. The child wasn't just showing him the future. It was reminding him of the road ahead. Jake muttered, "Guess you're not gonna let me take the easy way out, huh?" The infant made a soft humming noise as if laughing. That night, Jake camped in the open wasteland. He built a small fire with scraps of metal and dry brush, the flames crackling in the dark. The infant lay beside him, wrapped in its glowing cloth. For the first time since the crash, Jake allowed himself to breathe. He stared at the stars, his mind drifting. Somewhere out there, the hunters were regrouping. Somewhere out there, the rest of the child's enemies were watching. He knew they would return stronger than before, but he also knew something else. They had failed once. And if he had to, he would make them fail again. The baby reached toward the firelight, its silver eyes wide, the glow on its skin shifting like starlight. Jake watched quietly, realizing how strange the moment was. A human and an alien child alone in the wastes, yet bound by fate. He leaned back, whispering, "This isn't the life I wanted. But maybe it's the one I was meant for." At dawn, the sound of engines broke the quiet. Jake tensed, gripping the infant protectively. On the horizon, a small craft approached, skimming low across the barren ground. Unlike the hunter's ships, this one looked patched together, like a smuggler's vessel or a scavenger's ride. Jake crouched low behind a ridge, watching. The craft landed nearby with a hiss of steam. A figure stepped out, wrapped in dusty robes, their face hidden by a mask. Jake's heart raced. "Friend or enemy?" The figure raised their hand slowly, a gesture of peace. Their voice was muffled but calm. "Human, we saw the fire. We saw the fight. You carry the child, don't you?" Jake's grip tightened on the sling. "And if I do?" The figure lowered their hood slightly, revealing sharp features, not human but not like the hunters either. Their eyes glowed faintly, filled with recognition. "Then you are not alone," they said softly. "Others still remember. Others still resist. That child is the last light of a fallen world. Protect it and we will help you." Jake studied them for a long moment. Trust was dangerous, but he also knew he couldn't survive on his own forever. He looked down at the infant, who blinked up at him, calm as ever. Finally, Jake nodded. "All right. But understand this, if anyone tries to hurt this kid, I don't care who they are. They'll answer to me." The figure inclined their head. "Then perhaps you are the guardian we have been waiting for." Jake climbed aboard the stranger's ship, the infant secure against his chest. The craft lifted into the sky, leaving the burning ruins of the scrapyard behind. As the wasteland shrank below, Jake felt the weight of his choice settle in. He wasn't just running anymore. He was stepping into something larger, something that stretched beyond one ruined workshop, beyond one broken mechanic. The infant's glow brightened as the ship rose higher, silver eyes reflecting the endless stars. Jake brushed a hand gently across its head. "Whatever you're meant to become," he whispered, "I'll be there to see it. And I'll make sure you're ready." The baby cooed softly, leaning against him, its glow pulsing like a promise. Jake looked out the window as the stars opened before him. For the first time in years, he didn't feel stuck. He felt alive. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning.